Shri Gurupyo Namaha. Hello students, I am Rukmani from Pun Vidyashram. Hope you have all learnt the first and second stanza of the poem Lake Isle of Innisfree and understood the content of the poem. Now, in today's session, we are going to read and discuss the third stanza from the poem. Okay students, let me read the content. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear the lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement grey. I hear it in the deep heart's core. I repeat, I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear the lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore, while I stand on the roadway or on the pavement grey. I hear it in the deep heart's core. Now, let me explain the first two lines of the stanza. I will arise and go now, for always night and day I hear the lake water lapping with low sounds by the shore. The poet declares once again he will arise and go to Innisfree, and it is because every night he hears the water lapping against the shore of Innisfree. So here the author wants to go to Innisfree. So what is the reason? He wants to hear the sound of water lapping on the shore. What do you mean by the term lapping? Lapping means sound of water striking the coastal shore, and low is nothing but soft. Many of you would have heard the sound of the water lapping on the shore, right? So the author, who enjoys the natural beauty of the place, once again he wants to go to Innisfree for the reason of hearing the sound of the water that is lapping on the shore. And now coming to the next line. While I stand on the roadway or on the pavement grey, I hear it in the deep heart's core. So where is the poet standing? He is standing on the roadway or on the pavement grey. Where? In the city. So what is pavement grey? A path with a hard surface on one or both sides of a road that people walk on. So normally we call it as sidewalk. This line expresses the author's regret that he is so far from where his heart tells him he should be, and it's equally obvious that he has spent much of his time not at Innisfree but on the pavements grey. The use of pavement grey tells us the urban environment in which he finds himself is exactly the opposite of the natural world he desires to return to. Even though he lives in the much crowded urban place with paved roads, he can hear in the deep core of his heart the rural sounds of Innisfree. So it is there in the last line. I hear it in the deep heart's core. What is deep heart's core? In the depth of one's heart. So here, I hear it in the deep heart's core. It stands for the sound of the lake water lapping on the shore. Now let me summarize the third stanza. In the last stanza, the speaker restates that he is leaving. It's because every night he hears the water lapping against the shore of Innisfree, even though he lives in a more urban place with paved roads. So deep down inside, he is drawn to the rural sounds of Innisfree. Now we have completed the explanation of the poem. We are going to learn the literary devices of this poem. So the first literary device is a rhyme scheme. So the rhyme scheme of this poem is AB, AB. So do you know what is a rhyme scheme? Okay, let me explain. If you just go through the first stanza of this poem, you can find in stanza 1, the last word in the third line rhymes with the first line of the first stanza. Let me repeat. The last word in the first line rhymes with the last word in the third line of stanza 1, and the same way the last word in the second line of stanza 1 rhymes with the last word in line 4 in stanza 1. So let me just tell you those words. Innisfree, be, made, glade. So these are the words. So this is how you find out the rhyme scheme. So line 1 and line 3, the same way line 2 and line 4. So line 1 and line 3 we mark it as A, and line 2 and line 4 we mark it as B. Now the next literary device that we are going to learn is imagery. So what is imagery? Imagery is the use of figurative language to represent the objects, ideas, and actions in such a way appeals to the physical senses. Imagery makes the use of particular words that create the visual representation with ideas in minds. So normally when we hear some words, immediately we relate it or we visualize it in our minds. So the same thing here in this poem. Let me just tell you what is the purpose of imagery in a poetry. So the purpose of imagery in poetry and other writing is to create pictures in the mind of reader, pictures that evoke certain feelings which the writer desires the reader to feel. So this type of imagery appeals to the reader's sense of visual perception. So here in this poem we have two types of imagery. One is visual imagery and the other one is auditory imagery. Let me just tell you what are the visual imagery that you have in this poem. Veils of the morning, midnights all a glimmer, noon a purple glow, evening full of linnets' wings. So this is the visual imagery in this poem. So veils of the morning, you know that it describes the fog or mist in the morning, and midnights all a glimmer. It refers to the lake that shines brightly during the night and a purple glow that you see during the noon. So all this that you can visualize when you read the poem, when you read these words. The same way, auditory imagery is that when you hear a word, you relate it to the sound of that particular word. That is, be loud, glade, cricket sings, lake water lapping. So all these that relate to the sounds. Okay, automatically when you hear the words, you relate it to sounds. So that is called as auditory imagery. So this poem has got a strong auditory imagery. So the reader can almost envision the peaceful hymns of bees buzzing, crickets singing, and the relaxing sound of water lapping. Now, the next literary device that we are going to learn is repetition. You can see the repeated line in stanza 1 and 3. I will arise and go now. So this is the line that repeats in a poem and it comes under repetition. The same way you have dropping slow. So dropping again, you have a repeated words. The next literary device is alliteration. So what do you mean by alliteration? The repetition of consonant sound. So alliteration is the repetition of identical initial consonant sounds in successive or closely associated syllables within a group of words. So you can see the first letter of that word, again the same sound repeats in the successive words. The occurrence of the same letter or sound at the beginning of adjacent or closely connected words. Okay, so here in this poem you can find out this repetition of consonant sounds in the line lake water lapping with low sounds. You can see that L in all the successive words. So here the repetition of consonant sounds is present in the line lake water lapping with low sounds. So this is called as alliteration, where you can find the repetition of the sound L present in the words. The next literary device that we are going to learn is metaphor. So metaphor is a comparison between two things without using like or as. Okay, here the poet uses this to compare two or more things without using the words like or as. So example, veils of the morning. So there are a couple of metaphors in this poem. The first one is there in line 2 of stanza 2, veils of the morning. So here it refers to the fog, as I told you before in the explanation. So here it refers to the fog, and the last line of the poem is also a metaphor. So it means to say that the speaker of the poem deeply desires it. Okay, so these are the metaphor that you can find out in this poem. The next part what we are going to discuss about is symbols. So normally the author symbolizes some words in the poem, and here in this poem Innisfree symbolizes an ideal image of nature. So the author completely describes the natural beauty. So he compares to the place Innisfree. While Innisfree is a real island in Ireland, it represents more than a physical location within the poem. And the next one, as such, the island promises an alternative way of life for the author and others to aspire to. The next one, light appears briefly in line 7, where the author describes it flickering at midnight and glowing with a purple hue at midday. Light is long-standing symbol of truth and clarity. And the next words are the roadway and pavements grey. So it symbolizes the ugliness and boredom of urban life. So with all this, we have come to the end of the poem. So let us discuss some of the value points that you have to keep it in your mind when you read this poem. The poet has the desire to spend some time in the lake isle of Innisfree. He wants to build a small cabin made of clay and fence and to pass his time there. He will have the opportunity to hear the songs of cricket there. He will enjoy the songs of flying linnet in the evening. He also wants to feel the waves of lake water striking the shore. His purpose is to spend some precious time in the lap of nature. So the poet wants to enjoy the beauty and charm of Innisfree. So these are some of the value points that we have discussed so far. And now let me just tell you the theme of this poem. So what is the main theme of this poem? Here the theme is nature versus civilization. So what we value in nature is often the exact opposite of what civilization brings. Also, civilization sometimes destroys the peace that nature provides. Nature brings peace and harmony to man. Nature provides man with scenic sights and sounds which pleases him and enables him to live a peaceful, stress-free life. So students, please keep that in mind. So what does nature brings now? It brings peace and harmony. Okay. So man should live close to nature. The poet himself wants to escape to this peaceful and beautiful place and build his dream home there. So let me conclude with the moral values of this poem. The world we live in today is polluted with noise and dirt. Like ease, we yearn for a natural retreat away from our stress-filled lives. We must learn to appreciate the beauty of nature. In the midst of nature, man will be able to find peace and solitude. Hope that you have understood the content of the poem, and we have discussed the literary devices, the value points, theme of the poem, and the moral value of this poem. So students, kindly go through the poem, read the poem once again, mark all the difficult words. I've completely explained in both the videos. So please go through the poem, read the poem completely, understand the meaning, go through the video. Hope you found this video interesting. With all this explanation, I conclude this session. We have come to the end of the session. Thank you for watching. Have a nice day, children.